This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
I just received a letter from a student who thanked me for instilling the love of math in him. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome back. I don't know if I had the two of you on together or not, but Senator Chap Peterson, Senator Scott Surovell, thank you both for being here. As the session is winding down, we're interested in your telling viewers about key issues that may still be alive that you're working on, or maybe something that died that, in your perspective, should have been here at the last to pass. Chap, you have some seniority. You both served in the House, but you served in the House earlier than Scott, so we'll start with you, and then the two of you tell us what's happening.
Well, I my big focus this year has been electricity rate reform, basically bringing back review of electricity rates, whether it's Dominion Power customers or Appalachian Power customers. We suspended that review in 2015, and it's literally cost hundreds of millions to the consumers in overpayments. Because no longer do they have a right of refund when there's excess profits. So my big issue has been bringing back that right of review, as we've historically had in Virginia since 1902. The reason that it had been suspended was because of what was called the Clean Power Plan, which was an Obama initiative that never took effect, and now, of course, President Obama is no longer around. So it's logical, even by the logic of those people that pushed this suspension 2 years ago, to bring back rate review and to save literally hundreds of millions of dollars every year for Virginia ratepayers. So that's been my big push. That went down in flames. Senate Bill 1095, which I had filed at the outset of the session, was voted down in the first week of the session. No surprise. But I've kept it alive. I actually have been speaking with the governor, asking him to send down legislation. And at least publicly, he's agreed with me. Now, what we're going to do about that, I'm not sure. But that's been probably my number one focus.
Scott?
It's been a big session on water quality for me. My district, sort of 36th district boundaries runs along the Potomac River, basically from the Woodrow Wilson Bridge all the way down to Stafford County. And the first big piece of legislation we heard had to do with the Alexandria sewer. A lot of people didn't realize, but the city of Alexandria was actually putting about 130, or still actually puts about 130 million gallons of raw sewage from people's actual toilets into the river every year. Every time it rains more than 1/10 of an inch, the sewer can't handle it, it goes right in. And so I had a bill that required them to fix it on a time frame. The chairman of the Ag Committee, Senator Richard Stewart, who represents the Northern Neck, he also got interested in it because he represents a lot of people downstream and a lot of people that use the river for fishing, or they actually work. He's got a lot of oystermen and menhaden fisheries and things like that. He took the bill, put a tighter time frame on it, and the bill that passed the Senate gives Alexandria 8 years to fix the sewer. Originally, they wanted, I think, about 30. So this will hopefully deal with that. And then, secondly, coal ash has been a big focus of mine. There's a big Dominion power plant in the middle, right in Dumfries, and there's a couple million cubic yards of coal ash that's sitting out there in about 120 acres of ponds. and that stuff is leaching out all kinds of heavy metals into the groundwater, into the Quantico Creek and the Potomac. And there's actually about 6 of these pond sites around Virginia. There's one in Chesapeake, there's one in Chesterfield County, there's one out in Fluvanna, Buckingham County, and then there's 2 out in the New River Valley, the Clinch River, and one in Carbo, Virginia. And anyways, it's a big problem nationwide. There's 500 nationwide, and we need to come up with a system in Virginia to fix that. And I have a bill that passed the Senate about a week ago that's now over in the House next week that I'm hoping will get favorable treatment. We'll see. It's a little harder over there. But it basically requires Dominion to provide more information before we shut those ponds down.
So what about House bills coming over? Have you observed some House bills that you would be working with your colleagues on, either for or against?
You know, to be honest, as Scott can probably say, the first 4 weeks here, we're in our own little bubble.
Right.
And I just don't get over to the House or focus on what they're doing. And once the bills start coming over, this year especially, it seems like most of we've already seen through a Senate equivalent. Probably the biggest issue is going to be in the budget. I think the way that they treated teacher pay raises is slightly different. We gave teachers a 2% pay raise. I don't think they were as generous. So that's going to be an issue we're going to have to battle over. Other than that, you know, it sounds kind of funny because with the Trump and election, everything's so crazy up on Capitol Hill. It's actually been a little bit quiet this session.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I haven't seen too many. I mean, some of the more divisive legislation was defeated right off the bat, so we're not going to see that come over. And some of the issues that are coming over, even the ones that are controversial, really on the margins, like parental notification of certain textbooks and certain readings. And, you know, we've seen it all before. Again, to me, the other main issue I did focus on, and I got a couple bills out of the Senate, but frankly, they're marginal in value, is higher education and affordability of higher education. We've got a major problem in this state in that, in my opinion, there's a lack of accountability at the very top end of our universities. The universities don't feel accountable to the taxpayer. They certainly don't feel accountable to the General Assembly, and they operate themselves as if they're standalone free enterprises, which they're not. And quite frankly, there's a portion of people in the Assembly that like to pal around with university presidents and don't like to say nasty things to them or get on their bad side and lose their 50-yard line tickets. And so it's an uphill battle trying to get some reforms in higher education in this state. And that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, and that was actually an interesting coalition. Chap and I were in a press conference, I think, right the first week of session, I think. And it was a bunch of folks from Southwest and a bunch of folks from Northern Virginia, pretty much, who were very unhappy about this situation. I mean, the tuitions have been increasing more than inflation for years now. We both put in bills this year along with probably about 10 other members.
Yeah, there were a lot of bills.
Trying to inflict more transparency on the process. I know Chap and I both put in a bill about requiring schools to give 30 days notice before tuition's increased.
Right.
That's actually passed.
That came out of the Senate, so that's in the House.
Yeah, and an opportunity for public comment.
Right.
There's I have a bill about board of visitors. There's probably about 4 or 5 bills that are still in play, I think. But you know, we all thought it was pretty inexcusable that a school could raise tuition by 50% over 10 years and basically make a $1 billion profit, and then make another $1 billion off that $1 billion profit, and have more money sitting in its reserve account than the state has in its rainy day fund. What, 4 times more?
Yeah, it's crazy. and the justification was, David, is, well, we can take this money and invest it and make returns on it. I'm like, well, what are you, J.P. Morgan?
Right.
So you're assessing tuition on families so you can invest their money for them?
Right.
They can't do it themselves, apparently? It's crazy. And again, I was disappointed that the senior members of this body, which is to say the state Senate, they don't want to hear it. And again, you know, there's sometimes when we've got kids that are teenagers, so I feel it.
We both have 4 on their way to college.
Yeah, between us we've got 8 kids going to college, and you know, I've been fortunate and I'll be able to stroke the check, whatever it is. But the bottom line is, my kids have friends, and we talk about it a lot, and these expenses are real, and we owe it to them and their families to try and keep tuitions down.
I've also, as an observer and one with the kids coming along and now soon more grandchildren coming along, it was thought it interesting that when tuitions didn't get raised, the fees seemed to rise so much that like a game being played.
Yeah, well, every school has these health clubs now. I mean, you go
Right.
back to these colleges, and they've got some really nice facilities, and it's
We play basketball at VCU, and I belong to a private health club in Fairfax, which is not half as nice.
right,
And they get that free as students, so
Right.
more power to them, I guess.
right. And I think the athletic tuitions, I think, have been, schools, because of Title IX, if they want a football program, they've had to have so many other female sports. They've had
Right.
to, and all that's funded off, not off tuition, but
Right.
off fees, and I think that's been driving some of the fee side of things too. But there's definitely been an arms race on
No doubt about it.
facilities where schools are trying to attract students by offering all these amenities, and it's a nice lifestyle.
It's
but-
funny because my dad taught for a year in Korea, and there's no concept of sort of dorms and athletic teams. I mean, you get into a college, you live with your family, and then you take the train to go to class, and then you take the train home, and it's this whole concept of having like this lifestyle foisted upon you is a very American concept.
Yeah.
And as Scott said, it has become an arms race.
And on behalf maybe of the colleges, if I spoke with them, since I've been a trustee of a small private school, it's like the young people coming along, maybe not your children, but the young people coming along are looking for those things. And so
Sure.
the colleges, private, public, or whatever, I've got to have this in order to attract the students. So it's like a catch-22, a bad one.
Yeah, and again, you get parents like myself that are it's Stockholm syndrome. We're just captive to what our daughters want, and I don't even know what to say.
She may be watching this show.
I hope she is.
Right. Well, before our time's out, some other issue that you'd want to mention?
I've got some pedestrian safety bills I'm pushing. I represent basically the Route 1 corridor also along the Potomac River all the way
right.
down, and it's got one of the highest pedestrian mortality rates in the entire state. And there's also a lot of there's actually increasing numbers of cycling injuries. One of the bills I had this year was to require a hands-free ban. You can't use your phone while you're driving unless you have it on Bluetooth or a speakerphone. And unfortunately, that died by one vote in the Transportation Committee and actually died on a tie vote in the House Courts Committee. And we see more and more votes for that every year. I think it's going to pass sooner or later. But I have two other bills. One makes it clear that you can't use a bicycle lane to pass another car. There's a lot of people that'll see a bike lane, they think they can pass. It's very dangerous for cyclists, especially when people are queuing up at a red light. Cyclists will be coming up to the red light and somebody will want to pass on the right, and you can kill
Right.
somebody. And then I have another bill that makes it easier to hold drivers accountable when they kill or injure a cyclist or pedestrian. Cyclists and pedestrians frequently they get concussed, they can't remember, or they end up dead, and there's nobody to describe how the accident occurred. And so it's often difficult to hold somebody accountable either in the criminal system or in the civil system. And so I have a bill that passed the Senate it's going to be in the House next week. I'm hoping to get some favorable action.
I had my annual Chesapeake Bay bag tax. Every year I put in a bill saying jurisdictions in Chesapeake Bay will assess a 5-cent a nickel tax on every plastic bag used at grocery stores and convenience stores. And the idea is to restrict the number of bags we put in the waste stream and also raise money for water quality issues Scott mentioned earlier. And it gets votes. It's very popular. And I'm one of those people that, I go to convenience stores all the time. And I'm always very wary of how many bags they give me if I take any. And so I think people recognize that, look, when we collect all these plastic bags, it has an environmental effect. And the only way to eliminate that is to tax it. And that's a good way of taxation.
Well, thank you both very much for being on This Week in Richmond, and we look forward to having more conversations with you.
Sure.
Thank
for
you,
having us.
David.
Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and welcome back to our viewers who've seen another segment of a couple of senators. And now we're going to talk about Eyes on Richmond. And if people haven't heard about it, they will right away. Anna Scholl, the executive director of Progress Virginia, brainstorming this project, and Nelson Benitez, who's one of the people involved in the project. So, Anna, you start, and then Nelson enter in. What's Eyes on Richmond doing here this session?
Sure. So this is really a radical new transparency project that we launched this year at Progress Virginia to not only video document committee and subcommittee hearings at the General Assembly, but actually to live stream them, broadcast them live over the internet, so folks who can't get to Richmond, away from work or childcare duties in the middle of the week, can really see what's going on, be part of the process, and understand what decisions lawmakers are taking on their behalf.
Nelson, what do you do?
So what I do, I'm the legislative fellow for Progress Virginia, and my job is basically to record the sessions. Basically, we have our equipment here today. We have an iPod. Yeah, we have the connection to, for sound, and we basically record the meetings from beginning to end.
The people, hopefully they've seen articles that have appeared in newspapers, they've gotten information about this, but not only are they live streamed, they're archived. So
They
that
are.
if someone is seeing this and is saying, I didn't realize this was happening, they can go back and can look at a certain committee, because you're covering practically all the committees, I believe, aren't you?
We are not doing all of them, but we are trying to do most, and all of the video feeds are saved and archived. We're actually working right now on the permanent archive system. We're going to be getting all of that video over to Waldo Jaquith at Richmond Sunlight, if that's a tool that your viewers are familiar with. Waldo has been purchasing the floor video of the House and Senate for years and years, and archiving that and working it into his legislative tracking system at richmondsunlight.com, which is available to the public. So we're going to be sending him our committee and subcommittee video as well, and it'll all be tied into the database. So hopefully in a few more weeks, when you go pull up, HB, whatever the bill is you're interested in, you'll be able to see what happened in subcommittee, what happened in committee, what happened on the floor, and follow it all the way through the process.
Wow, that is radical transparency, as you said. I read the article of Travis Fain that appeared in the Daily Press, and he indicated that Virginia was only one of 9 states that's not at least covering some of the committees. And I don't think he listed the other 8, but that's a small minority to be a part of.
It is. I think Virginia is not known for liking change. We very much like our traditions, but I think the tradition of really not providing public access and documentation of what's happening in Richmond is one that does need to change. While the House and Senate have provided live streams and video of the floor session for many years, it leaves out where we really think of the bulk of the work happens in committee and subcommittee. That's where public testimony is taking place, where amendments are made to bills and things are debated. So if you really want to get to the heart of legislation and see that sausage being made, that's happening in committee and subcommittee.
And as our viewers probably know, that's where half the bills or more die and never get beyond that. In just a moment, I'll get you to show us, Nelson, if you would, the what great equipment is being used. I think you brought some with you, so if you want to get that and show it to us.
Right, so I mentioned before that we have our equipment here. So we have an iPod or iPhone that we use to record the meetings. We have our mic set. This one's the fuzzy mic set, as we call it. We have...
Now, how close are you able to get that mic to the podium?
Well, we just actually got a new cable set, so we just plug in directly to the audio out feed.
Oh, okay. Very good.
The General Assembly building is not really set up for video documentation.
No, it's not.
So we have the directional mic, which really helps amplify sound, particularly in subcommittee meetings, which are happening really just in conference rooms in the building. And we try to get as close as possible. And then in some of the larger committee hearings, there is an audio system that we can plug into the same way that radio or TV does.
Now, I interrupted you. Was there other equipment in the bag, or was that it?
No, there's definitely more equipment. We have our lens set. We have an external battery, and we keep it charged so that we can actually record for however long the meeting goes. We have our tripod set that we use to actually set up the iPod on, and we just focus on making sure that we record the committee meetings.
All right. And how many people are involved in doing the recording?
Just one person.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's sometimes when there's two committees going on, or three or four, then there are people covering more than one committee during that hour. Am I right?
Well, we try to cover most of the committee meetings, and we do have people, if there's one person in one committee, then another person will cover another committee.
All right. Okay. Now, as the session is ending, and we're looking forward to the reconvene day, what about other meetings that take place? Have you thought about covering those? Because from, particularly after April, from April on through to December, there are meetings of Appropriations Committee, Senate Finance Committee, there's the Joint Commission on Healthcare, other joint commissions. So are you ambitious to try to cover some of those as well?
You know, it's not a question that we have really explored yet, but I think it is a very important point that while the legislature is only officially convening for 45 days this year, that doesn't mean that the mechanics of government are stopping
Right,
for the rest
right.
of the year. And there's so much important work that happens throughout the other 10 months, either in Appropriations Committee coming back, or Commerce and Labor, or something like that, or in these sort of
Crime Commission.
these
and
right
others,
these
yeah.
extra legislative committees and commissions, the Health Insurance Reform Commission and others that are really grappling with big issues and making big decisions when the focus isn't necessarily on them the same way it is on a General Assembly session.
Yeah, because as you've seen in your few years covering the General Assembly, as I've seen in many, so much of what happens in the session occurs because of the 6 months before,
Right.
when they've been working on the issues and decide to go forward or not go forward in certain issues, and a great deal of public testimony. Some of the committee rooms are very small, and I've been hearing around Capitol Square that people at times get around their computers to watch one of the committees that you're covering because the room is packed, and Capitol Police are outside the door saying no one else can get in.
Absolutely.
And that happens more than once or twice during the session.
I think the Virginia General Assembly is frankly just not that transparent or accessible. The system is really set up to be opaque, and if you are not a professional lobbyist or a professional advocate who is here for 45 days solid or 60 days solid, I think it can be very hard to see what's going on or understand how you even track legislation. I think in this building we are all very used to getting 24 hours notice that a bill is coming up for a hearing.
Right.
But if you live in Virginia Beach or Alexandria or Harrisonburg, I think that can be pretty startling, and your ability to really come participate in the process is significantly limited.
Sometime this summer we'll be talking with people about what's going to happen in the Pocahontas building when this building that we're in right now comes down, and over a period of 2 or 3 sessions when the meetings will be in a smaller building than this, and it's going to be really challenging for people to be able to see what's happening inside those committees were it not for some transparency that's provided through services such as yours. Anything else you want to tell the viewers before our time runs out? Nelson, why?
I just want to say that, this is an ambitious project. We're working really hard to keep our legislators, transparent and honest. I hope that this project continues, and I really hope that we can get more people involved, and I really like to see this project move forward.
Anna?
Well, I think Nelson really summed it up. I think we're extraordinarily proud of the work that Nelson and all of our fellows are doing this year to document all of these hearings, and we think that level of transparency is really important, and it's something that we as an organization are committed to moving forward, with the caveat that we hope that it is only necessary for a short period of time, and the legislature will step in to do this themselves.
And if not in the Pocahontas building, which it may not occur, so you may have a few years.
Right.
Certainly when a new building takes place here on Capitol Square, we would certainly be working toward that kind of occurrence. So thank you both very much for what you're doing and for being on This Week in Richmond.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, David.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.